So we have a pretty wild chapter here today. A few of the things that happen, especially at the end, I think are meant to be confusing, or at least a little bit. But let's get into it. So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw Endeavor lose his right arm, one of All For One's attacks. And he wound up going goblin mode on All For One, and after an internal monologue of self-discovery, he wound up blasting him with a newly conjured arm of fire. And that brings us to the beginning of this chapter, with All For One protecting himself from Endeavor's attack with a force field quirk. He says that was a close one, and even though he had already seen it coming, he can't help but remember his first fight with All Might. He says that a wounded hero is the scariest thing there is, and we see a full page showing an enraged Endeavor concentrating fire where his right arm should be. He then moves forward and appears right in front of All For One. He is confused by this sudden speed, which was courtesy of Hawks. He sent in some feathers to propel Endeavor, as they did in their fight against High-End. Endeavor then forms a huge fist and hits All For One with vanishing jet burn. So yeah, this is a pretty cool sequence, but considering the state that he and Hawks are in, it's kind of like a downgrade from the original, to be honest. But the stakes are much higher. All For One is thrown to the ground, and the heroes below are confused by the impact of the fire, because the plan said that Endeavor would deal with him in the air. Hawks asks why he didn't use Prominence Burn, and Endeavor says that All For One had focused on defense by activating the force field. Prominence Burn is too valuable a resource to be used in such a risky way. Hawks is surprised by Endeavor's reasoning and says that he's cooled off, but Enji says he's as mad as ever. So yeah, we assume that this was for sure the plan, because this is what they originally did to Shigaraki back in the first war, and that sequence was amazing. And if All For One didn't take over Shigaraki's consciousness at the end of the Prominence Burn, they pretty much had won. Tomoe Wood sees that it is All For One that is down there and immediately grabs the other heroes so that they can escape. They are outraged because they thought it was their chance to team up and finish him off, but it's at this point that Endeavor comes down with another attack. Tomoe says that they need to make room for him, and Endeavor manages to break the force field. So I get it, of course, but that really would have been cool to see all of the heroes like gang up on All For One and just destroy him that way. I mean, there's no guarantee, but if he was ultimately defenseless at that point and we just see all of the heroes teaming up on him to ultimately finish him off, I think that would have been pretty cool. Hey, also guys, if you like my Hero content, please subscribe if you haven't already. It's fine if you don't want to, but if you just needed a reminder, here you go. Thanks. Endeavor begins dragging All For One along the ground for a long distance. All For One says that he can't move properly without the mask and tries to touch Endeavor to steal his quirk, but he shoots fire out of his eyes before All For One can make contact. So first of all, I've been waiting for All For One to do this. Considering that this is his greatest weapon, he hardly ever uses it. Like, if somebody gets close enough to him, rather than trying to hit them with like an air cannon, just take their quirk and they're done. Especially the more powerful opponents that he's facing here. But also, I love this from Endeavor. This is the first time we're seeing him shooting these fire beams out of his eyes. It's reminiscent to Superman, and I'm just a big fan of eye lasers in general. It's just too bad that, this is the end, but I guess better late than never. He says that these hands only exist to destroy the future of others, and All For One tries to retort, saying that Endeavor's hands do the same exact thing, and he agrees. Endeavor's narration then begins with him saying that the past cannot be erased. All the anger, resentment, and punishment will accompany him into his future, a future that must be crossed by the next generation. He must win this battle to ensure that the young ones will be able to choose the path that they want and not repeat the mistakes of the adults. This is when we see a panel showing some of the grown-up students, and then Endeavor says that he accepts to continue being punished as long as he gets out alive. So yeah, this is great. We're actually seeing a lot of Class 1A, mainly Bakugo and Izuku, as adults. Now, we're not seeing them full on. It's not like a fully articulated panel, and it's kind of a perspective from the back. But this is great. Izuku's adult hero costume is kind of what you would expect, I suppose. It's kind of like a more refined version of what he currently has going on, but instead of like the short, tattered Gran Torino cape, it's just like a full-blown cape at this point. Think about Gran Torino's scarf thing combined with All Might's Silver Age cape. It's kind of like that. And Bakugo kind of more or less looks the same. And this is also bittersweet because, like I said before, this is the end of the series. So Horikoshi is kind of just showing us like, hey, they grow up to be pretty cool, but you're never going to see it, at least extendedly. I mean, best case scenario, we'll get like a Demon Slayer-esque final chapter. But other than that, you know, don't expect too much. But anyway, going back to him saying that he accepts to continue being punished as long as he gets out alive, because after winning this fight, he still needs to take care of Toya. The narration closes with Endeavor saying that he will continue to hate himself while using Prominence Burn at full power. I guess he's not fully willing to sacrifice himself against All For One here. And the whole Toya line here, not a fan. This makes me think that, like, yeah, that light that we saw coming from his chest might be like a quirk awakening or something, unfortunately. I was hoping that it was an All For One bomb, because like he deserves that fate for sure, and it would give more motivation to Shoto and Endeavor to take down All For One. But considering that he's saying this, Toya might get some unearned redemption here. But anyway, Endeavor just did the Prominence Burn at full power to All For One, and after the attack, All For One seems to have been reduced to ashes. Endeavor confirms that he had no regeneration whatsoever, and even if he is hiding one, his body is not as resistant as Shigaraki's was in the previous war. One attack like that was more than enough. He's dead. That's what Endeavor thinks. But Hawks yells at him to get away from the body. All For One starts talking again, asking if the heroes really thought that he had gone into this battle without setting up any schemes. This body is already disposable, so he wanted to use it to test something if it would work. At this moment, we see Eri in a panel full of capsules that resemble the anti-quirk bullet. Just symbolism, she's fine, still at UA. Putting your own body at risk is what you guys do, isn't it? As he asks this, an eye and an ear begin to grow from the charred body of All For One. The narration from the beginning of the chapter continues, but villains are also even scarier when they are injured. Okay, so here's where things get pretty crazy and a little confusing. So us seeing the anti-quirk bullets, I guess this means that the bullets that they were in possession of, that Shigaraki stole from Overhaul way back when he gave them to Yujiko, he actually did something with them. I mean, if Overhaul could science his way up into making those bullets from her quirk in the first place, I'm sure Yujiko could go much further than that. So it's possible that he extracted like a variant of Eri's quirk from the bullet, and it was implanted in All For One as some kind of failsafe. Like maybe he wanted to wait until he was at the point of being completely destroyed, then it would kick in and he like regenerates, because it's saying that he's getting an eye and an ear here, and do see this in the chapter, and clearly he didn't have those before, because you know he kind of had the whole potato face thing going on. So if All For One does have some kind of rewind variant, then I think that would be pretty cool actually. And if we finally see All For One's like full unobstructed face, which up until this point has, you know, kind of been covered by shadows, I hope there's some significance behind it. I won't say, you know, oh, it proves that he's Izuku's dad, because I'm not even holding my breath for that stuff anymore. But I just hope that there was a reason why Horikoshi decided to keep his face vague this whole time. I mean, I just assumed it's because he didn't really need to have like a full-blown identity. He's more so just there to represent what absolute evil was. But hey, you know, maybe something will come of this. The focus shifts to the ocean. Yoichi, the first One For All user, senses something strange and he alerts Deku. However, at the same moment, he realizes that multiple somethings or someones are coming towards him. End of chapter. So yeah, Izuku is like still flying on his way to UA, and Yoichi as a vestige pops out like real time and starts talking to him. That's kind of like the thing that they've been doing lately, and we can only see what's coming towards him from like a bird's eye view. It's like these little specks in the sky, but there's multiple of them. So you know, your guess is as good as mine as to what they could be. I'm assuming they're tied to whatever is going on with All For One here, so maybe they're like new high ends or something. If not, they're new villains, or it's kind of like a misdirect and it's Star and Stripes gang, like the American jet fighter guys. I don't know, maybe you guys already know, but let me know in the comments if you do. What do you think's gonna happen, and what do you think's going on with All For One and Eri's quirk? If you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.